Bueller.
Oh, welcome to Monday Evening Science, everybody. Apologies for the switch of days, but sometimes we do have to have that take place. So I'm glad you bear with us and still join us for an awesome evening of fun. Today we're going to be continuing our look into climate science and what it is, how it works, how we actually have gained the knowledge that we have about, well, things that are very old sometimes. So I'm glad you could all join us again. I've been working diligently to try, since I'm in Denver, just outside of Boulder, Colorado, I've been working diligently at getting an interview at the Light Stable Isotope Lab that's part of the INSTAR laboratory that is a combination effort between NOAA and the University of Colorado at Boulder. And unfortunately, I was not able to get that interview just yet, so I'm going to turn things over to our esteemed panel for the majority of this show, so I'm going to go ahead and toss things right over to SciStrike.
Oh, okay, well, thank you very much, and hello again, everyone. Welcome back. And as you saw, this particular airing has a dedication. We're going to be starting out with just a very short video. It's Stephen Hawking on climate change. Since this is the climate science series, we're going to be starting up with that. So let's see how that looks.
One can see from space how the human race has changed the Earth. Nearly all the available land has been cleared of forest and is now used for agriculture or urban development. The polar ice caps are shrinking and the desert areas are increasing. At night, the Earth is no longer dark, but large areas are lit up. All this is evidence that human exploitation of the planet is reaching a critical limit, but human demands and expectations are ever increasing. We cannot continue to pollute the atmosphere, poison the ocean, and exhaust the land. There isn't any more available. One of the most serious consequences of our actions is global warming, brought about by rising levels of carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels. The danger is that the temperature increase might become self-sustaining, if it has not done so already. Drought and deforestation are reducing the amount of carbon dioxide recycled into the atmosphere, and the warming of the seas may trigger the release of large quantities of CO2 trapped on the ocean floor. In addition, the melting of the Arctic and Antarctic ice sheets will reduce the amount of solar energy reflected back into space, and so increase the temperature further. We don't know where the global warming would stop, but the worst-case scenario is that Earth would become like its sister planet, Venus, with a temperature of 250 centigrade, and raining sulfuric acid. The human race could not survive in those conditions. As technology advances, and our society becomes more complex, we have the capacity to destroy ourselves in more and more ways. Nuclear war and climate change are obvious examples, but there will be others we haven't even thought of yet. We live in an increasingly dangerous world, and however careful we are, it is likely that disaster will strike at some time in the future. However, if we can avoid killing ourselves on planet Earth for the next 100 years or so, we should have spread out into space. This would remove the danger that a single disaster could wipe out the entire human race. Life on Earth is possible only because a number of parameters lie in certain very narrow ranges. Some of these are clearly environmental, like the Earth has the right temperature and pressure to have liquid water. In a galaxy of 100 billion stars, many of which have several planets, these conditions will be met somewhere. But the facts that galaxies and stars exist at all, that nucleosynthesis takes place in stars, and that chemistry allows complicated macromolecules, depend on the parameters of the theory lying in a small region. Is this apparent fine-tuning of the constants of nature evidence of design, or is it another environmental effect? According to M-theory, our best candidate for a theory of everything, the same fundamental theory can lead to a large number of effective theories, with different values of the parameters, the so-called constants of nature. Somewhere in this vast landscape of effective theories, there should be some that allow life on planets like Earth. Let's hope there are such theories, or we don't exist.
Okay. That was a brief introduction to Dr. Hawking's view on climate change and what we have to look forward to. As everyone is undoubtedly aware, last week at 76 years of age, Stephen Hawking passed away and left quite a vacuum that it's going to be difficult to fill. Now,
Indeed, it's
I would say
it's going to be a shame not having Professor Hawking around. He's a truly incredible mind and an incredible individual to be able to persevere through everything that he had and to push as long, continue his education despite having a debilitating disorder, and share his knowledge with the world is absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, just not to sink into despair, just thinking about how quickly the mind must move, trapped in a body that would not cooperate, to be able to not just sink in despair and give up, it's pretty amazing to me.
I would agree.
Indeed. But now his views on climate change. I mean, in this video, he basically said we got to get off of this planet within 100 years, to ensure the survival of our species. And he got even more adamant after we pulled out from the Paris Agreement. That was where he said that Trump's actions could push. Let's see, say exactly here. Trump's actions could push the Earth over the brink to become like Venus, with a temperature of 250 degrees, raining sulfuric acid. By denying the evidence for climate change, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, this will cause avoidable environmental damage to our beautiful planet, endangering the natural world for us and our children. That's a direct quote. Now, this was questioned by other scientists, and that perhaps he was exaggerating. He's agreed the possibility of self-sustaining. Yes, I can go with that. Becoming like Venus, and he said, well, that's, we don't quite have the raw materials for that to happen.
Yeah, the probability of Earth becoming a runaway greenhouse like that in this situation is essentially zero.
Agreed. Now, we were not dealing with an unintelligent or even average individual. I would say that, I mean, we know what we just said. I suspect he knew what we just said. I believe he was just trying to emphasize, he was exaggerating slightly to emphasize the point that He mentions it's avoidable, and there are some rather serious consequences. And
Indeed,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there are technologies and energy advancements that if we applied ourselves a little bit more to things that are of need as opposed to things that are of want, we could probably very easily accomplish in a very short amount of time.
Indeed.
I have no doubt that there are minds on this planet that are perfectly capable of leading us towards alternative energies, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me that going nuclear is the proper way. However, I do, especially when it comes to fusion as opposed to fission. So if we would dedicate ourselves and dedicate a little bit more of our joint pool of money towards that as opposed to harming other individuals, I think we could actually succeed quite quickly.
I think we could too.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, I think we could too, but the problem is the greatest minds in the world aren't in charge.
Unfortunately, you are correct.
Agreed. That is a problem. And
so I think a lot of what Professor Hawking was talking about in regards to the runaway greenhouse effect is, have you guys heard of like the point of no return in regards to carbon dioxide levels, and how some scientists feel that it's reached that certain part per million to where its climate change is irreversible? Have you guys read a little bit about that?
I have looked into several cases on that, and it is a little disconcerting. I also, at some rate, kind of hope that eventually the human race may self-annihilate, and nature will be able to absorb some of our carbon output the way that it's supposed to.
Hope.
Oh, the planet will be fine. We don't need to save the Earth. We need to save us.
Yeah.
The planet's had worse than humans.
It'll change and alter in various atmospheric type of gases and even a little bit of heat.
Well, again, one of those ones that a lot of times we don't think about is just our basic methane output. Here in the United States with our cattle production, it's astronomical.
Oh, Andy,
was that a pun?
Don't take away my steaks, Andy.
I'm not trying to take away your steaks. I like my steaks too. It's one of those things when your population reaches a certain level. We might not be at critical mass if we were all vegetarian and all ran on solar power. But we exist in a certain facet, and we enjoy that facet and don't want to lose a lot of those aspects of our lives.
Agreed.
Yes, I think there's probably ways to kind of keep it to where it doesn't get worse, but we're going to have to kind of adapt to what we have right now. We do have higher levels of CO2. This is heating up the planet. It could eventually go into a domino effect and cause issues to occur because, as we were talking about last week with the CO2 levels, how that affects the ocean and how we affect the ocean. We're going to affect the atmosphere in other ways. And, the majority of our oxygen comes from the ocean.
Indeed.
Algae.
Yeah.
Algae.
Well, there's also the possibility it could swing the other way, too. If you dump enough fresh water into the northern part of the planet, you could kill the Gulf Stream and actually get it to go the other way and could potentially cause a great cooling, because technically we are still in an ice age. Technically.
Yes.
Indeed, we are still warming from our prior ice age. We've just started to warm over the last 40 years at a kind of scary rate.
Yes.
So what is in regards to Professor Hawking, he's had a lot of controversial opinions, especially about aliens and robots and things of that nature. And I know our society now heavily relies on technology, and we're going to need to utilize technology to combat climate change. I wonder if the use of artificial intelligence in problem solving, how Professor Hawking would feel about that, because he was very adamant that he had concerns with artificial intelligence.
Well,
there were reasonable concerns. There were reasonable concerns.
They are reasonable. If his predictions about AI came out to be true, then they would annihilate us, and then the planet would get better anyway. So it's like a win-win.
Well, the goal, it's what the real goal is to make things better for the planet, other species, and ourselves. If a way could be found.
This is where we scorch the sky to stop the robots from killing us, so we just destroy the planet in the process of becoming batteries for the robots.
I was thinking more of a Terminator scenario, because that'd be cooler.
Terminator, I suppose, yeah. But then if we married the concept of Terminator and, you know, like trying to persist as a species, then we get bored, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are just a bundle of cheer tonight, all of you.
You will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile.
Great.
Oh, it's sad though. You know, it's kind of Professor Hawking is gone, and I actually one of the things that I did when I was a teacher, I had an after-school program. It was the first STEM-based after-school program at for the county, and it was for students that were interested exclusively in pursuing STEM academics and STEM careers. And so one of the things that I did was take them out on a field trip. I took them to the university. I took them to the museum. I showed them all the ins and outs. I got them in touch with professors. But one thing that we did for the holidays was go watch The Theory of Everything in the theaters. And a lot of these students hadn't had a lot of experience with Professor Hawking outside of just hearing about him on TV sometimes. And so to get them immersed in his life story and from, you know, as told by his wife at the time, because I believe she's the one who wrote that book, it was really, really kind of cool for them to go, wow, you know, if he can think and do and persist, perhaps I can too. And that's kind of, I think, one of the cool things about Professor Hawking, in that he was determined. He was determined, and fortunately he had access to good health care to where, you know, they were able to get him the technology he needed in order to express himself. And I feel like that, you know, some people are like, well, he was in a wheelchair and all this, but he had technology to where he could still continue to work and do and share his ideas. And to me, it's actually quite inspirational, you know, because I'm an able-bodied person. I'm like, I have absolutely no excuse to not try to do and go, you know, and I don't have a Stephen Hawking brain, but I kind of see, you know, he just kept at it and he kept going, and he wasn't going to stop until he passed, and that's exactly how it happened. But I think it's kind of inspiring and awesome, you know, sad, but he lived a good, long, strong life.
He really did. I absolutely agree with you there, Mel. And just real fast, because this is getting to me, is anybody else seeing the luck dragon in this cloud?
No.
Are we talking about Falcor?
I'm totally seeing the luck dragon.
All right. Well, let's maybe we should have that not be such a distraction. Here, I'll switch that for you. Is this here?
No,
Since this is what we're talking, is this better? Is this better?
On Falcor going, yes, through the stars. That would be so awesome. Isn't it cool to see, like, Professor Hawking on Falcor flying through going, yeah, you know.
Right. Oh, now the theme song stuck in my head. Oh my gosh.
Oh, somebody asked if I'm on a weak mobile broadband connection. No, I'm plugged directly into my router, which is plugged directly into my modem. Is my sound awful, guys?
It's a little scratchy. It's
yeah, it's a little scratchy.
Huh.
Maybe do you have a lot of windows open? Maybe a
lot
of tabs. A lot of tabs, I mean.
I have just the side chat on YouTube, and I have the Hangout open.
Hmm.
So maybe that
Yeah.
I just closed. I had 2 other windows, so I just closed those.
Did you spill cider on your router?
No, my router's way over there. So if I did that, then I managed interdimensional travel.
Idle comment says you sound like a Dalek. Okay.
Yeah, you do.
But a nice
Say
Dalek.
exterminate.
A
Say
nice
exterminate now.
I shouldn't though. It's like a really nice mic. So yeah.
Mel, please say exterminate, please.
Exterminate.
Okay, that's it. Okay. I don't know. Do you want to try and refresh the Hangout window or something like that? Maybe that'll take care of it.
Okay, can I refresh without leaving the call?
Well, if you do, you can hop back in if it does boot you. But just refreshing it shouldn't boot you.
Okay, I will refresh.
In theory.
Oh, she just left.
Oh heck! Hopefully she'll rejoin quickly.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, good.
Excellent. Now say hi.
Hi.
Okay, it didn't sound scratchy then. Hopefully that's good. Alrighty.
It happens sometimes.
Indeed, it
happens
does.
Best of us.
There. Now it is not all scratchy. Excellent.
Yes.
Yay! No more Dalek.
Yes. Anyway, all right. Where were we? I got Falcor off the screen, so it wasn't a distraction anymore.
Okay, cool. Falcor's awesome though.
Oh yes, but now we can all just be intimidated by a level of intelligence we shall not achieve in this lifetime. So I don't know if that's going to be better or not.
It's interesting when we're thinking about intelligence. It's when we look at Einstein, when we look at Hawking, we look at all of in Newton and all of these people. They explain things. They look at a particular thing and they're like, why is this happening? And they have a different perception than other people. I don't know if the ability is that incredibly different so much as it is just the perception or their perspective of what they're seeing. And I feel that a lot of intelligence has to have some kind of foundation in creativity. You really need to be able to look at a thing and consider all of the angles there. And so for me, when I look at Stephen Hawking or I look at Einstein's theory of relativity is, in the energy equation, it's so simple. It's so simple, but we are able to go back and look at hindsight and go, wow, this does make a lot of sense. But the work that it took to prove something so simple, that's the thing. So Hawking was able to look at a thing and go, well, what if it's this way? Or, I'm certain he probably had other ideas where he's like, yeah, that one's not going to work. And I did all the math and it didn't work. What about this? I think it's probably more perspective and perseverance.
I've always personally thought it was a deep-rooted connection between the right and left hemisphere, and being able to visualize it in your head and having the artistic mentality to visualize what works, and also having the logical ability to sit down and run the numbers behind the visual beauty of how something can function. It's, we're taught so often about the right brain people and the left brain people, and some people are in the middle. I think a lot of our great minds throughout the course of human history have not been a dominant side, they've just been a dominant brain. And even if they're not utilizing any more of their brain than anybody else, the ability for one side to communicate with the other and to see the idea of space-time being this fabric, like Einstein did, and be able to do the math. Unbelievable. You know, same thing with Hawking radiation and black holes, sitting down going, well, there's this idea that there must be these points within the universe somewhere that are effectively of infinite mass and nothing can escape, and how can we even figure out how to detect them? It's that ability to look at the world around you with such an artistic beauty and such a logical beauty that really combine the two in a way that is difficult, I think, for even a lot of people that work in scientific fields. It's unique and it's special and it's really awesome.
I often wonder how much of it is coming up with a deep, well, maybe love is too strong a word, deep interest, we'll say, in a certain facet of the universe, be it math or whatever, at an early enough age that you know, synapses are still growing. You're still forming new connections, not just memory, but still forming new connections in the brain. So you end up becoming basically a tool designed for that specific task. I wonder how often we're just hypothesizing here. I don't think anyone knows for sure. I believe some of Einstein's gray matter was analyzed and found no significant differences. Nothing really notable that you know.
Right.
Oh, I see what it is. Nothing like that. But speaking of Einstein, I did like his "Everybody's a genius" quote. That was that's
yes. Everybody is good at something or other, you know.
That's
quite, you know, there are people in you know, research science that have done absolutely phenomenal things. There are people in veterinary medicine that have found links of diseases and cures for diseases that can be related to humans. There are medical doctors, same thing. There's engineers that have created things you could never imagine ever would have existed. There are chemists that have, well, Mel, you can break that one down for us. I mean, there are so many different fields and aspects, and sometimes it might be something as stupid and as pivotal as, well, I'm an engineer that somehow wound up doing work designing car washes, and I used to be a busboy, so I can pull this little bit of knowledge from when I was a busboy and how it is that we went about doing a certain task and no one saw it before. So I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to be this innovator in engineering, and who knows how many more innovations are going to grow off of that. And it's really cool the way that all realms of science wind up intertwined and feeding off of one another when you have no idea whether it ever will or will not.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting, and when I look at my background and where I've come from and where I'm at now, it's weird. I mean, I have, you know, biology background, biochemistry background. I'm now in, and you know, I had master's analytical chemistry, so all instrumentation. But I currently work with like recombinant proteins, so it's like, but I've done cancer research, so. But a lot of the analytical chemistry instrumentation, you have to have instruments in order to define the biological aspects if you're testing for cancer, diseases, or something like that. So there's all that chemistry with spectroscopy, plasmon resonance. You know, you have chromatography and how to separate proteins. So you have all of this chemistry stuff over here. And then I've got like the background in the genetics and, you know, and in the cancer research with computational chemistry, but also in testing. So then I worked in the Tree of Life project. So that's just, we were rearing ladybugs in the lab. So we would go and try, we were trying to sequence the genome of the ladybug. So but there's a lot of stuff that overlaps across the board in all of the disciplines, especially when you get into the detection of things.
That's very true. And of course, when you're in college the whole time, you're like, why do I have to learn this other science stuff? And then 10 years later, you're kicking yourself in the butt for not remembering it. You know? But no, I mean, even in geology, which most people don't think is a real science, but sorry, it is. I mean, I still use chemistry to this day. I use math like crazy. It's, even physics too. Everything is intertwined.
It really is. And I had to take a year of physics, and I really struggled with physics. It was hard for me. The first semester was hard. The second semester was not so difficult. The first semester was how many forces on a pulley, and I'm like, I just don't care.
Oh, that's interesting stuff. Come on.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care about that. Friction, whatever. There's a ball rolling down a hill. And I'm like, oh, graphs. Let's talk about photosynthesis. I know about that. And then we get to like the second semester of physics. It's 2 electrons are moving in a field. I'm like, what? Okay, I'm here. Let's talk about quantum. I was just like all about that and magnetism and force fields. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I did pretty well. That's supposed to be the harder physics. Everybody else was like, how many forces on a plane? That's so easy. I'm like, I hate that crap. I hated it. I did not do well with it at all. When we got to quantum and magnetism and electric, circuits, I'm like, yes.
You know what? No, but since you didn't do that well in that basic physics, do you remember more of it? Because, I mean, chemistry was my weakest science. And we can all kind of tell it is by what I do in my basement. But I think I retain more chemistry than I do stuff I was good in, like physics. I find myself consulting things less with chemistry than I do with stuff I supposedly am good at. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think if you use it more often than other stuff, then you just naturally develop an aptitude for it, I think. For me, when we got into physical chemistry, my professor for physical chemistry, the majority of that class was all the derivations of the ideal gas law and Maxwell's, equations and the equivalence, the equivalencies between the two when you're dealing with constant pressure, constant volume, constant temperature. There's different equivalencies that you can plug in to when you're doing the math. None of us had calculus 3, and you really need calculus 3 to do that kind of math. I was like, I cannot do this math, but I can explain it to you, and I can tell you what everything means, and I can tell you if I were to do something with this, how that would affect the other thing. But if you want me to sit and pound out the numbers, I'm just not going to be able to. So we took the exam was an ACS test. It was the standardized test for physical chemistry. So I studied as best as I could for that test. The best that I did was the stuff we didn't cover in class, and that was quantum mechanics. And so my professor was like grading, he goes, so you didn't, I did fine with the ideal gas law, the majority of the stuff, yes, but I did the best in quantum. And my professor was like, this just tells me I shouldn't have taught you anything at all this semester because you taught yourself quantum for this test.
I can actually completely agree with you on Stephen, when it comes to the fields that you aren't necessarily quick to grasp and really good at. You do. I personally agree, and I think you do learn a lot more about them, and you retain a lot more because, when I sit down and to be real honest, I've actually been taking notes for stuff that I have to do for work when I'm done with this. There are aspects of mechanical design and sitting down and putting together manufacturing systems. I see it in my head and I know it's going to work, so I don't always need to sit down and run numbers. But I've always despised accounting. I've hated finances my entire life, especially when it comes to engineering, because just give me a little bit more money, I'll make it happen. But then all of a sudden you get into the workplace and you actually have to abide by a budget. So since I was never really good at it, and since I never really liked the accounting end, I've focused so much on it that I can tell you, I can break down lean business processes with raw calculus, as opposed to if I'm coming up with a design for a system, I can just kind of see it in my head and know that it's going to work, so I do it.
Yeah, that's very true too. Yeah, I'd agree with that, especially if you're good and proficient in something, you can kind of just like picture it, and you may run the numbers just to make sure you're right, but you know, you usually are. That happens to me too when I'm doing field mapping and cross sections and stuff like that. So, but you can keep your accounting. You can have that. That's all you.
I don't like accounting, but in manufacturing engineering, it's probably at least 50% of my work.
Oh, sounds painful.
It is, especially when it's tied to having to engineer a process for a person to sit down and do with their hands on a day-to-day basis. It makes it's not fun, but it is fun, and I'm addicted to it, and I've been doing it for a while, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Hey, whatever works.
Right, someone's got to do it.
Indeed.
See, for me, I don't know, like the job I have now, I'm having to dig way far back into my brain, trying to find like, you know, my book learning when it comes to some of this. And so, because I haven't had any like application of it. So this is like no practical application. So even though I understand how things work fundamentally, applying it is a completely different monster. So I do, you know, even though I do understand proteins, have a background in biochemistry, I understand, you know, chromatography, I understand HPLC, SPLC, all of this, you know, trying to dig back down. I pulled out, and I actually Saturday, I found an old textbook that's actually quite useful for what I'm doing right now that I didn't realize this information was in there. I've bought 2 other textbooks though for my job because I'm that person. But for me, unless I use it a lot, you know, it's there. I just, you know, it's just not in my actively working knowledge. So for, you know, physics, like the first semester of physics with how many forces on a pulley, man, I busted my butt in that class, but I just packed that knowledge away and shoved it somewhere because I don't ever use it. But if I use it and it's something that was difficult for me, then yes, it will stick.
Hey, we have a question actually, this is an interesting question in the public chat from a little while back. Bo comes up with, everyone, what is your favorite Hawking quote? And one would think, I mean, you've talked to me before, it would be some deep, nicely sciencey thing, which I love those, don't get me wrong. But thinking about this specific series, the you know, climate science series and all that sort of thing, the one that seems to apply, if we're going to get anything done, is where he said people won't have time for you if you're always angry or complaining. That is probably important in talking about the things we are. You know, the blame, the anger, the what's wrong with you? You know, Senator whoever of my state, what the hell's the matter with you? You're an idiot. That's not going to work. With what we're talking about, that quote seems the most appropriate to me. So, just answering a question in the chat. Sorry for the interruption there, folks.
No, absolutely. I can completely agree with, you know, the internet and social media has been absolutely awash with Hawking quotes over the last few days. So at this present point in time, I really can't select any one particular favorite Hawking quote. Other than maybe a statement made on Futurama about shooting lasers out of his eyes and how he didn't know he could do that, because I hope someday he is a head in a jar with rocket engines and shooting lasers out of his eyes at panels of scientists, letting them know they need to stay in line.
Indeed. But,
For me, there's a couple quotes that I like by Professor Hawking. Look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious. For me, I feel a lot of the things that we lose as adults, and we beat this out of the kids in school, as well as we get rid of that curiosity, that joy of learning something new and going, I learned this, this is fantastic. And I feel like more often than not, we have the stigma associated with being wrong, like being wrong means you're stupid, or you're bad, or you're not good enough. And most of science is being wrong, and a lot. And so, but the thing that gets you to overcome that is, I want to know why I was wrong. I want to know why did this happen this way. And this is something I wasn't expecting. I was like, what the heck is this? Let's figure this out. That's where that curiosity for me just kind of kicks in. And I feel like adults are missing a lot of that inherent curiosity that they once had. And then the other quote I like is, science is not only a disciple of reason, but also one of romance and passion. So I love it. I love learning new things. I love communicating things as well. And it's something that genuinely gives me joy. I haven't read fiction in a while. Like, I'm currently going through Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, because the book before that was E equals MC squared, and Why Do We Care by Professor Brian Cox. The derivation of the energy equation is just beautiful to me, and I love it. So those are kind of things that I feel, were awesome quotes.
Indeed. It is requested in the chat that I mentioned to you, Mel, that you are scratchy again.
Yes.
I apologize. I do not like bringing you that news.
It might just be a lag issue, because when you joined originally, there was no static. Now it's a little staticky, and you reset, no static, little staticky again. Might be some kind of a lag going on with your signal. Who knows?
Could be. And let's see. It is. Oh my lord! It's 8:45 already. Mel, did you have?
No, 7:45 in real time zone.
No, I meant in real time. Not.
It's 6:45 as far as Colorado is concerned, and if you're not in Colorado, well, please don't move here.
Did you not have a video? Is it? You had a video that you wanted showed? Would you like that shown now?
Sure. It's a video about climate change and how they use bees to track for data. And this is from NASA.
Cool. All right. Let's see what that has to tell us. And Mel, maybe you want to refresh again. Maybe the problem will go away.
Hey, look, Falcor's back.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, now we just need a giant turtle.
She's back.
Yay! All right.
Okay.
See, sounds perfectly clear now. All right. Let us start your video here. Here's the one, the honeybee one. Yep. Here we go.
Every year, farms and fields play host to a symphony of sorts. Pollination, the springtime syncopation of flowering plants and the animals who feast on the nectar and pollen they produce. Over millennia, pollinators like honeybees have evolved a well-timed dance with plants. But now, plants may be changing their tune. Spring green-up, when plants wake from winter and sprout leaves. It's such a global phenomenon that NASA satellites can see it from space. Sensors, such as MODIS on NASA's Aqua and Terra satellites, can show us how green our planet is throughout the year. And they've captured something strange. In the northern US, spring green-up is starting about a half day earlier each year. The likely cause? Our warming climate. But is pollination also moving earlier? The images can't detect individual flowers, so scientists have been left to guess, until now. NASA research scientist Wayne Isaias spearheads a special team gathering data directly in the field. They're the honeybees in his Maryland backyard.
Honeybees are great data collectors for understanding processes of pollination. Bees fly 2.5 miles in all directions to scout for bee forage and bring back pollen and nectar. And so therefore they sample a very large range of environments.
By weighing the hives, Wayne can detect when nectar peaks and ebbs each year.
During the winter, the hive loses weight as they eat the honey to feed their babies and keep warm. And then when plants start blooming in abundance, the hive starts gaining weight. It can gain a tremendous amount of weight. I've had a hive gain 25 pounds in one day.
Wayne's been keeping tabs on his bees for less than 20 years, but in that time, pollination has moved more than 10 days earlier.
That's completely in sync with what the satellite data record shows, the world here getting greener earlier in the spring by about a half a day a year. If we have a few scale hive measurements with the wall-to-wall coverage of the satellite, we can then extrapolate those scale hive measurements of when the nectar flows occur to very large areas of the country.
Now, to get a bee's eye perspective of how pollination is changing in very different environments, say deserts or mountains, Wayne's doing a little networking.
HoneyBeeNet is a network of citizen scientist beekeepers that volunteered to weigh their hives to give us more data points, to see how the nectar flows are changing in all different parts of the country.
If pollination dates keep creeping forward, plants and pollinators could move out of sync. Currently, young bees are able to grow and get out on the hunt by the time plants bloom. But if plants bloom before bees are ready, both miss out. The plants don't get pollinated and the bees go hungry. But more than just bees might miss a meal. NASA satellites can help us understand how climate change might affect what's on our dinner table.
Modern agriculture requires bees as part of the production. It's as mandatory for food production as is pieces of irrigation pipe and fuel for tractors. So if we're to understand the impact of climate change on our ecosystems, we must understand how this plant-pollinator interaction is being impacted by climate change.
All right.
That's it?
I think so, yeah. So
that's what we got.
that's pretty interesting how they can use data from beehives to validate trends that they see in the warming trends from their satellite, and how that can kind of go down and affect pollination in bees and honey making. So
that is actually really cool.
Well,
yeah,
you know, I like hearing about this kind of thing. I don't know if you're aware of it, but at least in this area, as well as a lot of other areas, we're running a little low on bees these days. We seem to have a bit of a bee shortage going on, and yeah, there's.
It does happen when you dump copious amounts of poison into your environment, and
well, there is
hope
talk
nothing will happen because of it.
There is talk of a certain herbicide that may be responsible. That I'm guessing everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be one that I believe the claim is does not damage bee proteins, and I believe what they actually meant was the many copies of the same protein will not be damaged. Others in the bee, however, will be. I believe that's the case. Anyway, so
Indeed, I recently got a new neighbor that's actually a beekeeper, and I've been taking a look at what it would take to set up my own little colony over at my garden. So we'll see if I can contribute to the rebirth of more bees.
That would be a good thing. And I believe you get in many areas it's subsidized, where the government is encouraging people to do so, which is great. And I just hijacked what Mel was going to say. My apologies, Mel. I jumped in with my "where's the damn bees" thing. Back to you.
Well, at one point in time, the government encouraged all of us to have our own chickens, and how in the world would you make that happen in a Manhattan high-rise? Or, granted, one of the other projects that I'm looking at once my puppies get a little bit older is the possibility of ducks, because you can have, where I live at least, I can't have roosters, but I can have mallards. So, and we happen to have bald eagles, red-tailed hawks, great gray owls. They can pick up chickens and eat them at their leisure. So, being able to have mallards around would be, no, Pheno, I'm not stoned. I don't even smoke pot. Good grief. I have been working for about 12 hours at this point. Oh, God, never mind. Make that 13 hours, so...
That's too much.
It is too much, but I'm one of one manufacturing engineer in a factory of 50-some-odd people. My job doesn't end.
Yep. Actually, Mel could probably answer that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if you're interested in beekeeping, there are new engineering things that are kind of moving forward to where I think it's called the Flow Hive 2. It's where you don't actually have to disturb the bees in order to collect the honey. It's all self-contained. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I can put the link in the side chat here. And in regards to high rises, a lot of inner cities were doing roof gardens to try to combat the heat, because there would be a lot of expensive air conditioning bills. And if you have a roof garden where you literally have like a giant garden on the top of the building, that actually eliminates a lot of the building's heat that's generated during the summer. And then you also have a place for pollinators, and you can grow your own little vegetables and herbs and things like that. So I know that was I don't know if that's an active program now, but I know a lot of inner cities were trying to do that to combat the cost of energy to cool the building.
That is
very cool.
That's interesting. Now Mel, if it would be inappropriate for you to simply say no comment. Do you believe I'm on the mark with my idea of a certain chemical herbicide and its deleterious effect on the bee populations?
I think, well, I do recall reading something associated with a specific pesticide that was previously thought to not harm bees, and now they're showing that it is. It wasn't supposed to. A lot of pesticides, my understanding, and that may have changed, but when I worked with Dr. McKenna, who was actually a person who studies insects, he would a lot of times be contacted by pesticide companies to ask them, what genes do we need to target? Because he would essentially map the genomes of various types of insects and also see what genes they had in common so they could be placed on a tree of life. So a lot of pesticide companies will call him and ask him, we want to be able to eradicate just this type of species. What other species are related to them genetically? So it's now what I remember reading in regards to honeybees is that at one point in time, they were not affected by this pesticide, but somehow a little switch of evolution has occurred to where those genes are activated now. They may not have been activated before in the bees, but they are now, and this pesticide is now is now responsible for their diminished population. But that's something that wasn't figured out until well after the populations dropped. That's my understanding, but I could be incorrect on that. But I remember reading something about that about 2 years ago, so I would have to do a Google search to verify. But that was what my understanding was.
All right, and that's on that. See, again, I hijacked we played the B video, and then I talked about something completely different, unrelated to the B video. My apologies.
Okay, it's a chat. We're having fun.
That we
Well, you are getting crackly again.
Well, it's we're coming up on the top of the hour anyway.
Good.
If I mean, Mel, if you want to refresh again, by all means, have fun. But
it is getting about that time, and unfortunately, as painful as it is for me to say this, I actually have to go back to work now.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Like right now?
If I don't start writing this code now, I'm not going to remember all the stuff that I just came up with over the last 3 or 4 hours. So I've got to at least code this out real quick and see if it works, so that when I do a data dump from one software suite into Excel, I need to make sure that the way that I'm going to auto-populate other cells is going to function. Otherwise, I'm not going to get it done tonight, and then I'll procrastinate and put it off. So,
don't want to do that.
It's my life outside of awesome science fun.
And accounting.
Well, accounting is part of it. As long as I get the data dumps to function properly, going from software suite to software suite, machine to software suite, and so on and so forth, then the accounting gets done automatically, because at least basic calculus equations I can plug in, and those are easy. Sitting down and basically building a program in Excel to function the way that you think your brain functions is not so easy, and yeah.
Oh, and I have to apologize. I have no major zap to show.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, I'm holding a little ceremony later to honor 2 MOSFETs that gave their all.
Oh man!
See, it was not supposed to be a dual resonance system, and unfortunately, since it ended up being, and it was triggered, each new pulse was triggered by feedback from the secondary. It just so happens that the amount of coils I threw around the bottom were resonant with the secondary, and it drew a little bit too much current. So, we'll be having a short ceremony later on this evening for the 2 MOSFETs, if anyone wants to attend. No flowers, please. No flowers, please. Anyway.
That sounds like the MMC for mine that... there is something fun about looking at the video that you took of something and watching it in slow motion, and watching capacitors start to glow red for a frame or two before they explode is so entertaining. And then so disappointing.
Well, with I stuck with the glass insulators for the spark gap and I know least efficient, a lot of waste going on, but allowing it to be that wasteful, I get that cool blue glow. How many people have huge capacitors that glow blue?
Just you.
I think I'm the only one. Anyway, we seem to have reached the top of the hour here. So
Just to real quick holler at Bo, I have not tried using Comal 80. Everything that I've been doing is just basic macro programming so that when one program dumps a file into a new window, I'm able to grab those discrete locations that certain information is placed so that I can auto-populate other windows, basic equation based, just trying to move from something that I never wind up making right to something that will work right every time. So I will have to look into the COMAL 80 and try and get a better understanding of that one because I'm unfamiliar with it.
Fourth. Oh, sorry, there was a reference to fourth. Anyway. All right, well, does anyone on the esteemed panel, we got all these intelligent people and me on the show tonight, does anyone have anything to add?
I miss Stephen Hawking
already.
I miss Stephen Hawking already.
Indeed, I think we all do.
Yeah. I would agree.
He had a great sense of humor. He really did.
Indeed.
Oh, who was the comedian that he was on with? We played it in movie night.
John Oliver.
That's the one. I couldn't remember the name. Where?
Yeah, it's John.
Is there any No. Well, what about no? It was great. Yeah,
you regret being here. Yes.
that was particularly good, but yeah, on movie night we all got rather angry because of some criticisms of Dr. Hawkins. Anyway, all right, well maybe we should wrap it up then. What do you all think?
Sure. It was good being on, everyone.
Glad you could join us, Stephen. It was great having you with us tonight.
Well, hopefully I can do it again.
Indeed. Yeah, I've been part of the hangout for long enough.
No, well, you guys make sure there's Zap next time, though, or I'll cry. Seriously.
We will make sure that's okay. You know what? We'll try to video even during testing. So if there are any interesting flames, sparks, fire, anything of that sort, it'll be recorded. Just,
Excellent. And I like the name, by the way. A lot better than I would have come up with. Pickle lightning.
The Tower of Death. You liked that?
Yes.
It's 4 feet tall and it's very angry. Well, now even more so, missing 2 MOSFETs. All right.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, fine job, all 3 of you there. Nicely done.
Yay.
It was fun.
This was fun.
This was fun tonight.
It was great.
Indeed. It's always a fun time hanging out and talking science. It's a lot of fun making fun of science deniers, but sometimes it's a lot more fun to talk about the real world.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Not the pseudo world.
It really is. I don't know. Sometimes it just seems like we burn too much energy criticizing people. I mean, granted, they deserve it, but it's just like, I just want to do other things,
Right. It's so much fun to learn something new and get a perspective that maybe you didn't have before. And how can you find that perspective yourself? How can you look at a task maybe you never even realized? You wind up going to work tomorrow and you're like, I heard about this thing. I might be able to try this way. And your life gets easier. Your life gets better. You innovate. You create. It's awesome.
Yes.
And having so many varied specialties in the group that we seem to have formed just by communicating via various means is great, because what do I say? None of us knows everything, but all of us, we know a hell of a lot, and I really love learning from the rest of you guys. All right,
as do I. It's an absolute blast.
Andy, Bo says you should deliberately use undervoltage caps for the test coil for the fun of it. We'll make sure to video that.
Yes, I was about to say, please do.
There's a good chance I already do have video of that when the ground fault interrupt decided it was going to explode, and I let the smoke out again.
All right. Well, on that note, good night. Good night, my friends. Thank you for
Good night.
Thanks all for joining us. It's been a blast having you all with us here today, and I'm glad you weren't too upset by the offset from Sunday to Monday, but science is science, and it will prevail.
Indeed. Night all.
Yay.
Night.